this claw machine is broken. So I've loaded a bunch of credits on there. The problem is intermittent, so let's see if I can get it to happen. Sometimes when you lower the claw, it'll work normally. And other times it does that. Alright, let's do it again and let's see if it actually closes this time. Goes down, and that time it closed. But it does not close every time, and that's a problem. See? Let's go ahead and open up this side. And we also have to pull this over here to open up this side. Because yes, it does require 2 keys to open. But now that those are both turned, we can lift this up. And now we have access to the claw. What I'm thinking is going on is we might have a loose connection for the coil inside of the assembly up here. I don't see any screws around here, which must mean that maybe this side comes off with just some clips. So the clips were actually pretty tight. They were right there, but I got the cover off. And right here is where the coil connects to the game. There's some, what looks like string dust on the wires. That wouldn't really affect anything though. Tugging on the red wire a little bit, it feels tight. The black wire also feels tight. Really hoping there's not a problem inside the curly cord. Technically it could also be in the claw side. So let's go ahead and unscrew both sides. And now I think I can just pull the housing down off of the cap. There we go. And does the coil come out with it? Oh, yes it does. So we're just going to separate that. And now here we have the actual solenoid. You see one wire soldered right there. It goes directly through to the little tiny wire. And the other wire goes to that side, which runs through what I'm assuming is a capacitor maybe. And that goes to the other wire for the solenoid coil. So this side doesn't look the greatest. I tried zooming in on it. You can kind of see some of the strands not soldered down anymore. This side looks better, but I'd say our problem is with this. Since it works some of the time, I don't think this component right here, whatever it is bad. I'm thinking we just have either a broken wire in the middle somewhere or a bad joint. Let's hang this down here where it won't go anywhere. And then up here we can unscrew the little clamp. Now we just press that down and pull the wire out. Same thing with the black side, we press that down and pull the wire out. Whoever thought that was a sufficient way to connect wires, I disagree with it, but that's what's here. Anywho, we can now take our coil. So now back here, inspecting the curly cord, I do not see any obvious areas where it's broken. Maybe a tiny question mark right there, but I highly doubt it. So after looking at it up close, I'm not convinced there's bad wiring, at least being soldered to the board. But here's the deal. It's either something faulty right here or a faulty curly cord. I guess technically it could be on the game side, but the fact that it worked intermittently is leading me towards something right here. So my plan is to rework this and just see if that works, because if I need a new curly cord, I'm gonna have to order that. I might as well just try to make this look better and hope that that was my issue. So step 1, cut the zip ties. Step 2, what I want to do is I'm going to heat up those solder pads right there and right there. And I'm going to pull out the thin enamel wire. That way I can just remove this board altogether and get a better look at it. So I'll hold it from the bottom like that. Come in with some heat from the top. And just pull it. Okay, I got both of those enamel wires pulled out. I have them bent in the direction they go so I don't lose track. I don't think the coil part really matters, but now I can pull this off. And now we can actually see a part number for this. It is not a capacitor. It's a fuse. Oh, so KSD 9700 is this thermal protector fuse. Normally closed, 5 amp. So this probably monitors the temperature of the coil and removes power if it gets too hot. Well, that's interesting. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is remove this other wire. There we go. Both wires removed. Alright, and now that I got that part taken care of, we can take this aside. We can bring in our wires and we can get these ready for soldering to the board. So I'm just going to cut off a bit of excess from both wires. And now these right here are just little like insulation pieces. If you see, I can kind of pull that back up to expose the wire. So with that pulled forward, I'm going to cut the end off just like that. And now when I slide this back, it leaves me with some exposed wire. Well, I guess it's actually more like exposed insulation. And now that I have both of those wires prepped, I can push one of them through the board. And I want to be consistent with which one. So that one right there with that little purple looking mark, that's my red wire. And that one pushes through the side of the board that's furthest away from that little fuse. Now this is going to be a little bit tricky, but the trick is to apply flux to your wire. Just like that. And you make sure you have a nice clean tip, or clean-ish. Then you apply solder to your tip. And then if you touch it, the solder will go to where the flux was. And after holding it for a second, it'll solidify. And now we trim the excess. And now we have a nicely soldered joint. And I will go ahead and just repeat those steps to the other wire. And there we go. So this part is ready to go back onto the coil. So we just slide this back on. And before I push it down all the way, I need to feed the 2 wires through the holes right there. Just like that. That's all set up. I want to say in the original way, the wire was in that hole and the enamel wire was in that hole, but it doesn't really matter because they're connected to each other. So whether that one's in that hole or that one's in that hole, it really makes no difference. Now I can go ahead and give these joints a fairly standard solder job. Like before, we snip off the extra. Oops. And aside from a little bit of dried up flux, that looks way better. Last but not least, I've applied 2 more zip ties in the same fashion that they were before. And now this guy is ready to go back into the game. And now here we are. We feed our red wire back on the bottom and our black wire up top. Now we grab our claw and we drop our coil down inside. Reseat the little stress relief part. Insert it into the cap right here. And we get that screwed back on. We get our clamp secured and now we're good to test. If we still have issues, I'm suspecting either that fuse on the board or a bad curly cable. Alright, there's one good grab. Now we just gotta test it a bunch more times. Alright, so the problem is not fixed. Well, I discovered something, so watch. If I move it forward and I drop it and I hold it open, right? See, it does not close. Now if I play a game where it does close like that and I move it open, it doesn't close again. But watch when I come over to this side and I drop this claw, right? It'll come up, even if I open it like that, it'll close again. So what might be happening is if this can't close when it's all the way down because of the plush or whatever, it might just be stuck open. And even though the game is supposed to keep trying to close it, it's not. But I know for sure there is no resistance on here at all. This moves perfectly in and out. But I do know that the claw has enough strength to grab a toy if it needs to. See? It can grab and move it just fine. It just seems to have an issue getting it past the initial bit of closing. And to prove that, watch this. I'm gonna drop it. I'm gonna make it think it's all the way down. It doesn't close, but watch. If I push it up, it closes. So here's what I propose we do. Let's loosen these screws and we'll raise this ring up a little bit. That way the plunger's natural resting position is a little bit deeper in the solenoid, making it a little easier to pull that in. Alright, that's a little bit better. The tips touch now, so now we can go ahead and give this a bunch of test plays. Alright, well, I'd call that a win. Yeah, I did a lot more work than I had to. But I mean, it's not like it won't be for nothing, right? It wasn't necessary, but I did make it look a little bit better. And the game is now working, so bye-bye.